I'm here at the RETCON conference with Spencer Levy, a global client strategist and senior economic advisor for CBRE. Spencer, thanks for joining me.
Delighted to be here with you in Vegas at RETCON. What a cool place to be.
Spencer, AI's impact on office headcounts. How will that affect demand? How will that affect cities that depend on office demand?
Well, I think you got to look at it from a very big picture down to the small picture, right? Big picture is this. There are certain types of job functions that will be impacted. There are certain types of job functions that will not be impacted. I think to cast a broad brush, say, all office will be disrupted is too broad a way to do it. So the way I like to do it is not only to look at the industries, I like to look at the functions within those industries. So you might be in financial services, but you might be back office. That's going to be more disrupted than people in financial services who are in the head office. And so from my perspective, those places that have durable demand drivers, or as I put it, 5 factors of awesome, which is capital, human capital, live, work, play, infrastructure, and foreign money, those places are going to be just fine because they're going to attract the best talent and the highest value add work. So I think the question of disruption overall really is a question of take a look at the micro market, take a look at not just the name on the door, but the function that they're providing. And if the function's high value add, limited disruption.
Right. And how about that analyst level in Wall Street?
Well, once again, the lower you go down on the value add function level is where you have the risk of greater disruption. But even analysts need to be analysts before they can become associates, before they can become vice presidents. So notwithstanding the fact that there are many functions you could throw into a AI computer and maybe you don't need them as much, you need them and need them because ultimately that's how you learn. That's how you train. I come from a diverse background of a variety of things, from law, from banking, from research. And if you're not in the pits learning how to enter data, because garbage in, garbage out, you're never going to get better. And so I think that notwithstanding the fact there are some functions that can be done, I think the value add over the long term is that some of them shouldn't be done. But nevertheless, there will be some functions that are disrupted. I'm not going to hide that ball, but I'm not going to say it's 5% of the space, 2% of the space. It depends on the function.
Right. Okay. AI in commercial real estate. What have been the best uses so far that you've seen?
Well, we're still in our early stages, but I think the best uses are what I would call efficiency gains, which are, in my mind, somewhat backward looking, right? So if you want to do property management, I think they're terrific because anything that can be measured, from the lights in this building to the fire safety systems that are around here, fantastic for that stuff. And I think it's getting better and better and better from an efficiency standpoint for certain types of property management. It's getting better and better and for certain types of valuation advisory services, for lower end, plain vanilla appraisals. But I think for that higher end work that requires productivity or much more complex thinking, still at the very early stages. In terms of its ability to predict, that's where we're still starting. And that's where having great data is going to be essential so you can get to that point. And to put in a shameless plug for CBRE, we've got great data and that's where we're trying to go.
Yeah. Looking to the future, where would you like to see AI make some improvements in efficiency?
Well, let me tell you a story. Can I tell you a story?
Sure.
So I started off in this business as a young attorney. And as a young attorney, I used to do a lot of lease abstracting. And I went to a function the other day where lease abstracting was discussed by the CEO of some large publicly traded REIT. Said, well, instead of paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for lease abstracting, I stick it into this program and wham, it comes out nearly perfect. And a lot of lawyers were concerned. I wasn't. I was like, that's fantastic, because I don't want to spend my time lease abstracting. I want to spend my time thinking about how I add value to that client. And so by freeing you up from some of the, what I would call lower value add tasks, it gives you more time to actually add real value. And that value is determining what is value, what creates demand. So yeah, there will be some disruption at the lower end, but I think that disruption is going to be more than paid back by the higher value add work you can do because your time is freed up.
As general market data becomes commoditized. What is the role of proprietary data?
I respectfully disagree with your characterization because sure, there's some commoditized data, right? So footfalls, okay? You can go to one of a dozen companies now and determine the footfalls right in this hallway right now, right?
Okay.
I guess that's a piece of commoditized data. But what is not commoditized is the stuff that is, once again, higher value add. What did it take to get that tenant to go into this building versus to go from this building to that building? And it wasn't just the rent, it wasn't just the TIs. It was 100 different factors, from the number of parking spaces, how many of them are EV, how far do the executives live from the location. So having this proprietary data not only is important, becomes even more important in the new world, because there will be some forms of commoditized data like the footfall data, like the demographics within 10 or 20 or 30 rings. By the way, that 10 or 20 or 30 rings demographic data, that's been around for 30 years, probably longer. So I think having proprietary data only becomes more valuable.
Yeah. The better the data, the better the deal.
Well,
the firm,
I mean, I don't want to
guess.
use this in a pejorative way, but garbage in, garbage out. You got to have good stuff that's going in the system.
Yeah. We can't talk about AI without talking about data centers. Do you think the power challenges, and the public outcry will slow the pace of development?
Well, I know that it is. I just got back from Minnesota, where the legislation has either been passed or pretty close to being passed to ban new construction of data centers for like a year.
Wow.
And there's been a lot of other places where there's been pushback because of the concern of crowding out housing for power reasons, crowding out housing for water reasons, because data centers use a lot of water too. So yeah, it's a problem. And I think people need to look at the big picture here. And the big picture is, if this can be done responsibly, which most times it is, it's a good thing to have, because it not only creates the jobs when you build the new data center, it also makes us better from a efficiency and ultimately a productivity standpoint. So I am not down with regulation that restricts the new development of data centers, though I don't want to say that in a crass way. I'm very respectful of the limitations on water, of the limitations on power. So if those are done responsibly, I think that's where people should be thinking, rather than outright bans.
Yeah. More measured approach to what's been going on.
Well, I wouldn't say what's been going on has been the Wild West, because it hasn't.
Okay.
It is not the Wild West out there. It is people that are true experts in how you get power, how you get water. And it's how you get it isn't necessarily the generation issue, though that's part of it. And that's why nuclear comes up and other forms of power. It's the transmission. Because it's one thing to say we need power. It's another thing to put that power line across that person's land to get to yours. So it's transmission experts, I think, that are going to be most valuable. But also, I'll go a little further afield here. You got to look at the hardcore infrastructure. So I just got back from Portugal, and when I was in Portugal, I took a look at a map. In fact, I'm going to show this map on the screen tomorrow when I give my speech tomorrow. And what the map shows is the underwater sea cables from Northern Virginia to Portugal. Why is that relevant? Because it doesn't terminate in France, it doesn't terminate in Monaco or anyplace else, in Portugal, and also a little bit in Spain. And because of that, that's why there's great opportunities if you have this great connectivity of the, in this case, the sea cables, but other forms of connectivity when it comes to power as well.
Okay. Well, enjoy the conference.
Well, thank you for having me, and I really enjoyed the opportunity, and go RETCON.
Okay. Thanks, Spencer.
Thank you.